Institute Board of Trustees. I would like to welcome you to the FNA 2024 technical sessions provided by the Metal Treating Institute and the MTI Educational Foundation. Before we introduce the session, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. First, we would appreciate if everyone would silence their cell phones so as not to distract the presenter and others in the class. FNA is officially videotaping each session for attendees to view once they have been produced after the conference. We ask everyone to please refrain from taking pictures of the PowerPoint slides or videoing the presentation. If we see anyone taking pictures or video during the presentation, we will ask you to put your camera away. Please be respectful of this request. Lastly, there are QR codes on the walls that go to a survey for the session. Once the session is over, we would appreciate you taking a few moments to complete the very brief survey. Please help us improve future technical programs. Drawing for a $100 Amazon gift card. Now for our session. The presentation will review the key elements to the array of changes being approved in various AMS specifications, including 2750. Helping welcome the speaker, Mr. Andrew Bassett.
Thank you. Good morning, all. I hate when they have me as the first session. I'm still trying to wake up here. I want to kind of go through the specifications. I'm a member of AMEC, the Aerospace Materials Metals Engineering Committee, and been on that committee since around 2006. Mainly my thing was to get involved with pyrometry, obviously, with our company. Pyrometry is a big thing for us, so we will discuss some of the changes in AMS 2750 here shortly. But I just kind of wanted to go through some of the other heat treating specs that have been on the docket for changes as they're going through. Some of them are going through some major overhauls, so want to kind of keep you abreast of what's coming down the pike for all you guys. So we'll have some questions and answers at the end of this session. So the Aerospace Metals and Engineering Committee, that's their focus on the specification. When I first got involved with the AMEC committee, I was thinking this is a bunch of aerospace primes shoving requirements down our throats, and it's actually not. It's the end users are also very involved with the specification. So one of the things I always suggest, if you have heartache about specifications and whatnot, get involved. You do have a say in the committee. So we do meet 4 times a year throughout the country. So there's a list of places that we're doing it. I think the next one, Heather Falcone from Thermalvac is hosting that one in Southern California. And then we have one in January, or no, I think she's doing January. November is going to be down at Lockheed Martin Aeronautics in November. And then I'll be hosting one out in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania in April. So I want to jump into the heat treat specifications that probably a lot of you have to comply with. So 2759, the base document. Of course, right when I finished this program, 2759 came out for its first ballot, the base document. So I said it was in the works. It's early in the works. So the first ballot, the first draft is out there. AMS 2759/1 and 2, those projects are going to begin in November of 25. July of 25/3 is going to start for the precipitation, hardening, and corrosion-resistant steels. 2759/4, that ballot has not started yet. Starting in November, 2 months here, we have /5, that project's going to begin. So if any of these are important to you, might be a good idea to get involved with those specifications. Gas nitriding, that was published, /6 was published, the latest revision in July of 2004. 2026, we're going to wait for carburizing. So November 2026 is when that is going to start. And right now, no ballot has also started for /8 for those who are in the ion nitriding. Some of the acronyms I have in here. So the LSB is a limited scope ballot. So hydrogen embrittlement relief for baking of steel parts. That limited scope ballot closed in February 2024. So once these ballots are closed, we usually wait until we get together. We do wait to get together to talk about any of the ballot issues, discuss them, and come up with solutions for them down the line. Likewise with /10, that ballot just closed in 2023. more than likely that we're going to be, I know we'll be talking about that specification come that ballot closed. I'm actually not sure where that one sits. It's hard to find out, from some of the sponsors that take care of that, what they're working on, what the ballot issues were, or the sponsor maybe not showed up to meetings and stuff, so it sometimes gets delayed there. /11, that's the one that closed in September of 24, and that will be discussed at the November meeting. So /12 and /13 have been worked together at the same time by the same sponsor on that one. So you can see when those limited scope ballots have changed. So usually when the specification goes through, it's changes of the specification, and all the major stuff is worked out. Maybe there's a few things that need to be finished up. That's when it goes into a limited scope ballot, so we don't have to open the whole document back up and have everybody say on there. Usually we're just attacking smaller issues within the specification at that time. So with the limited scope ballot, we believe we have to stay under 5. Any kind of technical changes in the spec, if it's more than that, then it has to go to a regular ballot, 28-day open ballot. But once we get down to the narrow stuff, we put it down to a limited scope to just work on the last pieces of issues. And then those who have vacuum furnaces, 2769, that project's going to start in November 2024. So AMS 2770 for your aluminum guys, this document's going to be a major overhaul, and it has been. It's already gone through 2 full revisions and voting upon. Once I finished up this program, of course, I ran into Heather Falcone from Thermalvac, who is the sponsor of that specification. And she's like, oh yeah, here's the latest draft copy. And she sent me that yesterday. So I haven't had time to peruse every little change in 2770. But really the biggest things that are being added in there is for vacuum aluminum brazing. So brazing's getting put in for aluminum into AMS 2770. So borrowing a lot of the stuff from the AWS specification, and a lot of those requirements are going to be filtered into 2770. 2771, the draft is going to be put up to the sponsor at this point. And then 2767, uphill quenching for aluminum. That was going to be a specification, I think, that was going to die off, but there was a heat treater out of California that says we still do that. And so they took over the sponsorship of that document and ran with it. So that one has been updated, and the ballot was closed of October of this year. 2801, originally it was going to be issued in March of 2024, but once it was released, they found some more issues with it. So they're going to have to go back and immediately rewrite that spec. I think Boeing had some real concerns regarding the changes in that specification, so they're going to go back, open that document back up and make the changes that's necessary in there. And then there was AMEC 21AE, which was going to be created as a new document for heat treatment of titanium raw materials, but then they turned around and designated it back to AMS 81200, which was the raw material specification for the spec. That ballot just closed in July of 2024, and we'll be discussing that as well. More than likely, that should be going into more of a limited scope ballot going forward, those who work with the titanium side of things. 2774, the heat treatment of nickel and cobalt alloys. That went to AC is Aerospace Council. That's the last step in the process. That ballot closed in July of 2024, and that document should be released. Those who are familiar with ARP 1962, several years ago, that was totally revamped. Our own Tom Morrison from the Metal Treating Institute was the sponsor of that specification. Did a great job with some other team members, got that up to date, and it's going through its review right now. So that ballot closed in July of 24, and another redraft of the has been submitted and ready for to go back and look at and review and get some technical comments on that spec. All right, pyrometry, 2750H. The Aerospace Council adopted that specification back in July of 2024 when the document was published. Limited changes from Rev G to Rev H. Again, most of that document was changed for clarifications to reduce interpretation issues of the specification. Those who are familiar with the specifications process, Typically every 5 years is when the AMS specifications have to be taken a look at. If you probably noticed over the last several years, AMS 2750 is changing every 2 years. That was actually a request by the AMS 2750 sub-team to keep that document more fresh, kind of to keep NADCAP interpretations down to a very minimal. Those who are familiar with the NADCAP process and those who have been around for a while used to have the Pyrometry for dummies, or they called it the Pyrometry reference guide now. You don't see that document anymore. And that was a request by the AMS 2750 team saying, hey, we don't need you making an interpretation on the specification. We'll do that for you. So we did, back at Rev F, we decided we want to change that document every 2 years. Got the blessings from Committee B, which owns the specification, and Aerospace Council. So it's not that we want SAE to give you $145 to buy the spec every 2 years. We want to keep it more fresh and up to date for you guys, so you're not spending, a lot of time with NADCAP NCRs. So I'll give you a quick overview on some of the changes in Rev H. So 5 of the definitions have changed in the specification, dealing with expendable sensors, frequency, your qualified operating ranges, and what uses are. Section 3.1, we modified the section on Table 3, we modified Table 3 a little bit. We also added back fixed point calibrations. And that was a request from mostly over in Europe. When we took fixed point calibration out, a lot of the European suppliers, thermocouple people say, hey, we use fixed point calibrations. You're putting a real crimp on us. So we did say, all right, we'll put that back in, but we still have that 250-degree rule between calibration points. Table 5, we added more examples for clarity. So if you see the document and you've looked at them side by side, you'll see a lot more examples and things that we've added to the documentation to help it clarify things for you guys. Again, trying to keep that interpretation down to a very minimum. So we did have to account for data collection for cycles less than 6 minutes. I saw that once we published that, I was like, oh, we have a flaw here. Before you had to have so many data points during a cycle. We have customers that have brazing cycles that are 30 seconds. How am I supposed to get 6 data points in a 30-second cycle? We had one customer their cycle time is 0. Go up, hit it, come back down. How are you going to get a bunch of data points? So again, we saw a flaw in the specification, went back and changed that. So data collection shall be 1 minute for cycles less than 6 minutes. We added data collection shall also demonstrate soak time, heat up, and cooling rate requirements if applicable. So it wasn't just your soak time or your getting enough data for the overshooting portion. We also want to have collecting data that you have your soak times are met, heat up rates as required. If you notice, we removed on Table 7 mechanical and thermal elements. That was the old style, if you're familiar with Partlow systems that had a mechanical bulb, and usually in quench and freezer sections, and we restricted down in the last several revisions. We decided to remove that because we don't see that in the industry anymore. Everyone's moved to the digital age. Again, added some more examples in Section 3.2 for clarification of the 3-point calibration. We had to address situations where you have a defined qualified operating range, like a furnace. 3 to 1200 degrees, you check 3 points, 300, 1200, and a midpoint. Well, how about you have a quench system for aluminum quenching? Don't really have a defined qualified operating range. So instead of us defining it for you, hey, we gave that power back to you guys. You define the range you want to calibrate that equipment in. So that's where, we're trying to let the suppliers choose some of this stuff versus us mandating the requirements. We also defined a little bit on the digital synchronization of timing functions, a little clarity to the specification to add on the synchronization. We also talked about extrapolation. We've always talked about extrapolation when it came to thermocouples, but we also finally added it in for instrumentation as well. With the specification, that extrapolation is never allowed. We did have to put back in, way back in, I think it was Rev E, when we did some work with NISTs, that our national standards actually extrapolates data above, I think it's 2200 degrees. So all those thermocouples you're using above that are calibrated, it's been extrapolated by our national standards. So, but we can't do it, they can. We also talked about interpolation of correction factors between two node points, as long as you're using the linear method. So again, more clarity, more understanding of the specification. Calibration status needs to be available. One of the things that this day and age, you see a lot of calibration systems that have moved to the times, software that does your calibrations and keeps track of that stuff. And so you always had to have a calibration label next to your instrumentation. Well, why do we have to have a label? Can we have something that's digital, maybe by the furnace operators, to know what the calibration status is? So we basically said we have a suitable means to know what your status is. So maybe those labels are going to go away. Maybe you have a computerized system that's keeping track of the status of your calibrations, your TUSs and SATs. As long as that's available to the operators to know that they can run that equipment, maybe those labels are going to go away for you guys. We also changed the offsetting allowed for refrigeration and quench systems. Before it was plus or minus 10 degrees for offsets on that stuff. And we're like, why? It's a refrigeration and quench system. Why did we tighten that down so much? So went back and opened the door back up a little bit. Do want to make some changes. We thought there was a problem here where we talked about if you do make a modification offset that has been implemented, we want you to take a look back at previous stuff to make sure you didn't have any issues prior to implementing these offsets. Just basic quality, making sure that you're good to go. Provide objective evidence that those offsets didn't cause for any failure of other calibrations, SATs and TUSs. So just throwing the offsets in is good, but you better evaluate. SATs, again, if you see all these notes right here, everything's talking about clarity. Added more clarity, added more examples, so we can have some clear understanding of the specification. When I got involved with the 2750, it read at the 12th grade reading level. And so most studies have done that most of us read in the 8th grade reading level. So we're not dumbing down the spec, we're just making it more clear and understanding. That's why the specification has grown from 23 pages to 50 some odd pages now, because we want clear understanding of the specification. So you can see some of the clarities. We talked about beyond due dates and extension days, alternate SAT method if those people are using that, that does not have a defined qualified range of use, like quench tank freezers. More clarity on the frequency of the alternate SATs. And we added two options for the weekly relationship testing failures for SAT reduction in the waiver. More clarification in 3.4.10.4 about when correction offsets, instrument recalibration is required due to a failed SAT. Added clarification for SAT documentations for set points when no defined range is used. So again, we always, a lot of people will do their calculations off the set point, but you have a quench tank that who knows what it is that day. So what correction factor do you use? So whatever the instrument's reading. So again, clarity on this. And again, some of this stuff comes out of NADCAP audits. Auditors write these silly findings of, well, you don't have a defined set point, so I'm going to write you a finding on your quench tank. Well, there is no defined set point. So, again, added some clarity on that. We added modified tables 11 and 12 that deals with SATs for parts and raw materials. For Class 6, types D and E instrumentation, added a 1% of reading for those tolerances. Uniformity surveys, we added some exemptions for salt baths and other thermal processing equipment. When you're maintained at a single temperature, you have the requirements to capture data 100 degrees below your set point and bring that up. Well, if your salt pot for aluminum brazing is running at 1110 degrees, how are you going to capture that data? So again, some clarity on the understanding of the spec. When something's sitting at a temperature, you can just do it right there. Modified the TUS sensors for all recorded sensors have to be recorded simultaneously. I guess someone found out there's some guy out there doing his TUSs, handwriting the numbers in. So don't have, and they couldn't really write the NCR on that, but we kind of clarified it that we want you to have some sort of recording system to capture your TUS data versus just handwriting the stuff in. So that's where we use the words of simultaneously to have all those readings down. Added some more clarifications and examples for the relocation analysis for types A and C instrumentation, as well as radiation surveys. So anybody that have aluminum furnaces and required to do radiation surveys, we rolled that back all the way back to Rev C. of the documentation. The whole radiation survey morphed into a nightmare when it started saying, hey, these are required for all thermal processing above 800 degrees. And early on when that was brought up, I objected to this. I was like, wait a minute, we can't do this for vacuum aluminum furnaces, for brazing furnaces, and kind of got steamrolled over that one. They said, yep, let's do it. My friends at Heat Treat Australia reached out to them and said, hey, this is not going to really work for you. Can you guys do me a favor and melt some aluminum for me? And they did, and show what a radiation survey would look like in a vacuum furnace. So it got modified again, and we said, you know what? We don't own the material specs. 2750 is just a testing spec, pyrometry spec. So how it's worded now, when required by the applicable material spec, we're throwing this into 2770 or 2771 or 72. If they're going to mandate the radiation test survey, then section 3517 will say this is how it's done. So as 2770 is going through a rewrite, kind of have a hole in the industry about radiation surveys. So current version, street version of 2770 right now doesn't say you have to do a radiation survey. It will in the next draft. So with G, maybe some of those people don't have to do radiation surveys right now until 2770 gets revised out. So one of the things that some of these were for end users, and I believe it was Ed Engelhardt from Solar, mentioned that, hey, we don't really want to punish the end users of the specification if maybe they have an aerospace prime that's driving them to get some work out for them. And they're like, hey, we can't do that. We got a TUS that's coming due. And the prime says, I don't care. I want my product. Get it shipped out. So we added these sections in here. These are brand new sections in the specification that you are allowed to go past the due date. You're allowed to go past the extensions by table 22. And as long as you have written approval from the CEO, you can do it. But as soon as it's available, we want you to go ahead and just do another TUS or calibration when it's next performed. It needs to include the whole entire range, so basically initial survey. And if you're doing continuous types furnace, basically do your initial survey and everything's good to go, then you continue on with your frequency reductions. So we're not going to punish you again for having one of your customers saying, go, 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 we're past due. You have to start all over, lose your frequency reductions and all that. If everything pans out okay, move forward. But again, the big thing is going to be making sure that you have approval from all the primes that you may be doing work for to allow for this. Again, out of service, out of use, beyond the next TUS date, you pass those extension dates, periodic survey needs to be done, returned into service. If everything looks good, you're good. So one of the things, if you're familiar with, we added this out of use, out of service thing. Probably would have been better if we had it during the COVID times when things were slow. Take your furnace out of service. Basically, if you have a piece of equipment that you're just slowed down, hey, we don't need that furnace for a while. Things pick back up, times are better for you, bring it back into service, do all your testing that you've missed, and soldier on. We're not going to punish you for having equipment down because you're not using it. As long as it meets the next testing, you're good to go. Everybody's favorite subject, rounding to E29. We had 4 or 5 paragraphs under that heading. Guess what? We just simplified it real quick. It said rounding now can be done to E29, any international standards, or commercial spreadsheet rounding, and it's to the 10th of a degree. That's it. That was one of my favorite NADCAP auditors running around there and writing finding after finding after finding, saying you need to bounce it out 2 decimal points. Like, we never mandated that in the specification. That was directly because of one auditor writing the stupid finding over and over and over again. It was voided repeatedly. It actually became a NADCAP, what do they call those, the supplier alert, basically saying, hey, stop this nonsense. So again, those type of things we look at from at NADCAP is seeing what these auditors are dreaming up. I've had some discussions with some people within NADCAP and some of the good auditors and where are these findings coming from. Especially with pyrometry, it was well documented for a long time that 80% of those findings came out of pyrometry. And because I think we're making the document more clear and understanding, we're seeing more auditors going into the weeds to find more stuff. Well, we want to cut that stuff out. Last thing we tweaked there, this is with the quality assurance provisions. So we, again, added some more clarifications about the 17025 accreditation requirements. We added some clarification when equipment needs to be removed from service, past your due dates. My favorite one was removing footnote 1. That footnote said you had to have written justifications, and I fought like hell to get that out of the last revision of the specification, because what's a written justification? My dog ate my homework. I don't like NADCAP. Those were things that I saw in people's written justifications, and you couldn't do a darn thing about it. So we said, you know what? Let's take that all out. So there's no quality benefit from having a written justification. If you go past your due dates, you're within the extension periods, you're okay. No more written justifications. Hey, guess what? We're starting Rev J. We're having our first team meeting Thursday morning, right after Heat Treat Show. So we added a few new members, a few weaned out from retirement, didn't want to be involved with it. So we have Roy Atkins from Braddock Metallurgical. He's also the AMEC chairman. Myself has been part of the team, Ed Engelhardt from Solar Atmospheres, Will Farnell, who's one of the PRI staff engineers, Jeff Koss from the Boeing Company, James LaFollette from Geocorp, Alex Mejia from Thermoelectric Wire and Cable, Kerry Reed's new to the team, anybody here in blue, from Collins Aerospace, Doug Schuler, NADCAP auditor, Pyro Consulting, Cyril Vernalt from Airbus, as well as Jim Way from Howmet. So there is a mix, if you see, of people that are end users, some primes, some outside people from thermocouples and calibration sources. So again, it's a different mix of people in the industry. Cyril Vernalt showing us what's going on over in Europe and letting us know what the requirements they need to see over there. So it's a good mix of different people within the 2750. When I first got involved with it, there was only 7. Now there's 12 of us. So again, trying to make sure we capture heat treaters, raw material suppliers, primes, the whole 9 yards. What's coming down the pike? Also, AMS 2750/1. This is going to be for non-metallic pyrometry specifications. I know we're in heat treat, but this one's going to be targeting bonding, autoclaves, basically for those. That was the first draft of that specification. I was part of the sub-team on that specification as well. I was the only one that was from outside of an aerospace prime. 3 guys from Boeing, 4 people from Boeing, Bell Helicopter, and a few other aerospace primes, and they were railroading a Boeing spec in. Honestly, it was just all Boeing specification. I'm like, hey, that's not going to fly. That's not going to fly. The slash document should go with the base and make the exemptions that you need for your industry. So first ballot, there was over 80 technical comments on the specification. After 4 hours of discussing the first 8, the Boeing guy said, I'm done. I said, I'll take the spec over now. We'll put some clarity back in the spec. Yeah, he wanted all sorts of exemptions like, hey, we don't need to track thermocouples. As long as they were calibrated, you can use them forever and never track them. I think the aluminum guys would like that too. So yeah, didn't really fly over that well. AMS 2750/2, for those who are doing hipping, it's on its 5th ballot. Colin Thomas is the sponsor of that specification. He's been working with the aerospace primes, the end users of the specification. Hopefully this will be the last ballot that's going to be put out there. That thing's been going back and forth a long time. Some of the team members on his team have, the last ballot, one of the team members put in like 30 technical comments. They're like, really? You couldn't discuss this beforehand? So there were some negotiations on that. So hipping will have its own pyrometry spec. And then I just found out that there's going to be pyrometry for heated tooling. That draft is getting prepared, and Jeff Koss from Boeing Company is going to be running up that specification. Like I said, get involved with the specification. November 2021, that one's going to be in Dallas, Fort Worth. MTI is sponsoring hosting that one. Those who want to attend, definitely please attend. We set up also a tour of the F-35 facility as well. So we get to do fun things too occasionally. As I mentioned, Thermalvac is sponsoring the one in Southern California. Dates we haven't figured out. Same thing with April of 2025. I'll be having that one at the historic hotel in Bethlehem. So that's a good event there. And then July and November. So these are typically the 3 or 4 months that we do: January, April, July, November. Spread across the country. Do some East Coast, do some West Coast, some in the middle. So definitely get involved with the specifications. You guys have any questions? You made my job easy today. This is great. I appreciate you guys attending. If you guys think of anything, dream of anything that's bothering you, giving you a heartache, you can definitely stop by our booth. We're here. More than happy to answer any questions you have on the pyrometry and the heat treat specs, or I can get you the names of the sponsors of the specifications. If there's things that are bothering you, give you their contact information. You can reach out to them directly on the heat treating specifications. So again, appreciate you guys attending, and enjoy the rest of your shows.